නිවසේ මෙවැනි මතුපිට රැඳෙන විස බීජ 99.9%ක්ම විනාශ කරන විම් ක්ලීනර්ස්.
Tonight, edging closer. Container carrier MV Express Pearl threatens Sri Lanka with major ecological disaster. Things to do. Experts say home treatment only a last resort as Sri Lanka's vaccine shopping plan is revealed. Friends indeed. Sri Lanka to get $200 million boost from currency swap with Bangladesh. 18-year deal. The cabinet greenlights Rajagiri Elevated Expressway project to China Hub Engineering. All that and much more coming up on First at 9 this Tuesday, the 25th of May, 2021.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammike Kanaka. Now then, the Marine Environment Protection Authority says that it is too early to gauge the damage caused from the fire and explosion aboard the container carrier Express Pearl that is currently on fire just outside the Colombo port. Carrying toxic materials such as nitric acid, the incident on board the vessel has the potential to be one of the most devastating environmental disasters that Sri Lanka has ever faced. Once again, the Indian Navy is on its way to assist the Sri Lankan Navy as they once more battle against the odds to control a fire with heavy winds and strong currents to contend with.
After averting one potentially disastrous fire on board the MT New Diamond in September last year, Sri Lanka is facing another one, this time just 9.5 nautical miles outside its busiest port, the Port of Colombo. The MV Express Pearl, a 3-month-old container vessel, caught on fire last Thursday. However, with the severe weather conditions experienced in the past week, what was previously a manageable blaze has, after a chemical explosion this morning, become one that threatens to unleash the worst environmental damage Sri Lanka could have ever imagined. The reason remains its cargo, namely 25,000 tons of nitric acid and 1,486 containers of cosmetic creams stored on its fire-damaged deck. Already 8 containers have reportedly fallen overboard after the vessel began to list, prompting authorities to issue a fishing and swimming ban, and also warn local fishermen to stay away from any floating cargo to avoid contamination and harm. Further, with experts citing an increased risk of the vessel breaking apart, concerns are also growing regarding the additional damage from its 300 metric tons of fuel remaining in its tanks. 25 crew members meanwhile were evacuated this morning, with 2 reported injured as firefighting efforts by the Sri Lanka Navy and Air Force continue. With that, chairperson of the Marine Environment Protection Authority, Darshini Lahandapura, offered an update on the current situation.
The fire was controlled up to yesterday evening, but then due to the wind pattern and the ocean currents, the fire actually escalated, and also the explosion inside the containers which contained some of the hazardous material helped the escalation of the fire. So now the Sri Lankan authorities actually trying very hard to avert the fire, doing the continuous firefighting, and also the crew was evacuated, including the salvos, and 2 members got injured during the evacuation.
The MEPA chairperson also revealed that regional help is on its way in the form of 2 Indian naval vessels, a tugboat, and a Dornier marine reconnaissance aircraft by tomorrow morning.
At the moment, we are expecting regional support from India. So we were told that 2 ships from India, they'll be coming soon. 1 ship will be reaching today night, and 1 ship and a Dornier flight will be reaching early morning tomorrow, and also 1 tugboat will be coming to support us for firefighting as well as to curtail the oil spill if any oil spill happens.
Lahandapura added that the owners of the vessel can expect to face compensation claims from the Sri Lankan government as scientists rush to begin testing coastal waters and air levels in order to get a better picture of not only the current damage, but to also prepare for any possible nightmare environmental scenarios.
We took water samples from various locations within the close proximity of the vessel, and we will be sending those to government analysts to get the measurements of the water pollution. And also with the support of National Building Research Organization, we carried out air pollution monitoring within the close proximity of the vessel, and the same experts actually from NBRO, they'll be monitoring the air pollution close to the Karavala PT area to ascertain what impact from this vessel has actually caused to the land area. We are planning to take proper actions, legal action also, to get the compensation for the damages or losses if negatively impacted to our environment.
කාලගුණය කොහොමුණත් රයිනෝ නං වහලට සේෆ් තමයි මුළු ගෙදරම.
Sri Lankans across the island flocked to shops to make use of the window of movement given today to replenish their stocks in preparation of another stint of movement restrictions. Some people respected health and safety guidelines, while some didn't. Yesterday afternoon, the government extended the travel restrictions covering the entire island until the 7th of June in a bid to control the COVID-19 spread in the country. However, movement restrictions were planned to be relaxed on the 25th and the 31st of this month, as well as on the 4th of next month, giving people an opportunity to restock their essentials. But the people were not allowed to travel far and were asked to use the nearest shops, and they were also encouraged to walk there instead of using vehicles. As for people in isolated areas, they were not accorded the luxury of movement due to the threat of COVID-19. With that being the case, the restrictions were relaxed at 4 a.m. today, providing a window of 19 hours for people to purchase essential goods sufficient for the next 5 days when the restrictions become effective once more. The expectation was that people would rush to shops, and that's exactly how things turned out. It was also commendable how some people behaved with discipline, maintaining social distancing and wearing masks. That said, as for some sections of society, the continuous warnings about the dangers of the UK variant of COVID-19 doing the rounds at present in the island have fallen on deaf ears. For them, social distancing wasn't important. In the meantime, the Palyagoda fish market also remained open for trading today. There too, social distancing was limited to theory. Meanwhile, it was reiterated today how 2 shops from a village will be allowed to operate even when the travel restrictions come into effect.
මේක සංචරණ සීමා පනවලා තියෙන දවස්වලටත් හදිස්සි කාරණයකදී මිලදී ගැනීමක් සිදු කරන්න ඒක විවෘතව තබා ගන්න අවසර ලබා දෙනවා. එම ස්ථාන දෙක ග්‍රාමීය කමිටුව මගින් තීන්දුව කරලා ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම්තුමායි අවසරය ලබා දෙයි. Once today's window of movement comes to an end at 11 tonight, people will have to wait until 4 a.m. on the 31st for the next. Until then, the entire island will be under strict travel restrictions. One of the observations made in recent days when travel restrictions were in effect was people impersonating those who are permitted to travel, such as essential services personnel and doctors. With this in mind, the police were extra vigilant on any such persons.
Sri Lanka police had received information about impersonation cases. Some persons had been travelling or moving on roads pretending as professionals, so the employees of essential services. Therefore, yesterday a special operation was implemented across the country in order to apprehend such persons, and especially the territorial police officers in charge of police stations had been instructed on the issue. Accordingly, this morning Narahempita police has arrested 39-year-old person who was using a car with the symbol of doctors and the car has been taken into police custody. In addition to that, Cinnamon Garden police has arrested 46-year-old person along with the car using a symbol of a doctor, and the arrest has been made at Vijayara Mawata Colombo 7. In addition to that, another arrest has been made on the same offence at Fort area in Colombo by Fort Police. The suspects would be dealt with the quarantine law. In addition to that, the relevant sections of the penal code for the offence of cheating by personation.
Yesterday saw another unwanted record set in the police arrests front pertaining to quarantine law violations, with 745 people being arrested for offences such as failure to wear face masks and failure to maintain social distancing. The figure became the highest since the 30th of October 2020. Deputy Director General of Education and Research at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hemanta Herath, says that treating patients at home will only become an option if rising patient numbers push the country's healthcare system to breaking point. In the meantime, it was also confirmed that Samagi Janabalawege parliamentarian Nalin Bandara and his spouse have tested positive for COVID-19. There is also some good news for the country's vaccination program, as 500,000 doses of the Sinopharm COVID-19 jab are expected to arrive in the country by midnight tonight. With the rapid surge in COVID-19 infections around the island, number of people being admitted to hospitals also saw a rapid increase. What's more, the government took a policy decision to admit all COVID patients to hospitals and other treatment centres dedicated for the treatment of COVID-infected persons, with a feature of the third wave being that more and more patients developing serious symptoms need for hospital beds was at a premium. Owing to this, medical associations also weighed in, urging the government to rethink its strategy and allow home treatment of COVID patients. As the calls intensified, discussions were held on the possibility of home treatment of asymptomatic patients with the view of reducing congestion at hospitals and treatment centres. Yesterday, a pilot project to this effect was launched in Kalutara. Commenting about the progress of it, Deputy Director General of Education and Research at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hemanta Herath, today emphasised that the home treatment of COVID patients should only be an alternative if the rising patient numbers push the country's healthcare system to breaking point.
රෝගියෙක් නිවසේදී කළමනාකරණය කිරීම තාමත්ම බාරදූර කාර්යයක්. මේක නිසි පරිදි සිදු නොවුනොත් අපිට ඒ රෝගීන්ගේ ජීවිත ඔවුන්ගේ සංකූලතා පිළිබඳව නොයෙකුත් අභියෝගවලට මුහුණ දෙන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා. එම නිසාම තමයි නියම ව්‍යාපෘතියක් හැටියට මේක ක්‍රියාත්මක කරලා එහි ලැබෙන ප්‍රතිඵලත් අනුව මේක අවශ්‍ය පරිදි කටයුතු කරනවා. හැබැයි මේ මොහොත වෙනකොටත් නිවෙස්වල සුළු ප්‍රතිශතයක් රෝගීන් රෝහල් ගත කරන තෙක් දිනක් කිහිපයක් සමහර විට නිවෙස්වල සිටිනවා. දැනටමත් අපේ හොට්ලයින් හරහා අපි ඒ අය දැනුවත් කරනවා, ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට උත්තර දෙනවා, අසාධ්‍ය තත්ත්වයට පත්වීමට ඉඩකඩ තියෙන රෝගීන් හඳුනාගෙන ඒ අයව රෝහල්ගත කිරීමට ප්‍රමුඛත්වය දීලා ඒක කිරීම කරගෙන යනවා. මේ සියල්ල හේතු කොටගෙන ඉදිරියට නිවසේදී බලා කියා ගන්නවාය කියන ප්‍රතිපත්තියට යෑමට ප්‍රථම දැනටමත් අපි මේ ක්‍රමවේදය ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවා. නමුත් මේක කරන්න සිද්ධ වුණොත් හරියට කරන්න ඕනේ. අන්න ඒකටයි මේ සූදානම් වෙන්නේ. මොකද ඒක දවසෙන් දෙකෙන් සූදානම් වෙලා කරන්න අමාරුයි. ඒ සූදානම් වීමේ ක්‍රියාවලිය මිසක් මේ වෙනකොට ඒක ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීමට සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශය හෝ වෙන ආකාරයක සූදානමක් නැහැ. මොකද ඒකට හුඟක් පාර්ශවකරුවන් අපිට සහභාගී කරව ගන්න වෙනවා. ඒ සියලු දෙනාම මේ පිළිබඳව දැනුවත් වෙන්න ඕනේ, පුහුණු කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ අයගේ ක්‍රියාවලියන් අපිට අධීක්ෂණය කිරීමේ වැඩපිළිවෙලක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ.
In recent days, novel coronavirus cases were being confirmed across all 25 districts, and yesterday was no different. 2,971 cases in total were recorded in the island, with the highest daily caseload coming from Colombo, with 605 infections. Kalutara and Gampaha reported 472 and 395 cases respectively, confirming that the Western Province is still the worst affected in the entire country. In addition, 223 infections came from Ratnapura, 171 infections were detected from Kurunagala, 168 from Gaul, 96 from Matara, while 92 were confirmed from Nurelia. The remaining 17 districts accounted for 728 infections. A foreign arrival was also among yesterday's cases.
Almost 18 months into the defining health crisis of our age, the world remains in a very dangerous situation. As of today, more cases have been reported so far this year than in the whole of 2020. On current trends, the number of deaths will overtake last year's total within the next 3 weeks.
Meanwhile, 33 COVID-19 deaths were confirmed yesterday, increasing the total number of fatalities to 1,243. According to the Department of Government Information, 5 of them had in fact occurred yesterday. COVID pneumonia was cited as the cause of death in most of the fatalities. With questions being raised about COVID-19 related deaths occurring at homes, Dr. Herat explained that those who succumb at home are in fact asymptomatic patients and confirmation of the infection is only revealed after death.
මේ අය මිය ගියාට කොවිඩ් රෝගයේ වැළඳිලා රෝග ලක්ෂණ පහළ කරමින් හිටියේ අනං බොහෝ වෙලාවට පවුලේ අය ඒ අයව රෝහලකට ගෙන යන්න උත්සුක නොවෙනවා නොවේනේ. නමුත් බොහෝ වෙලාවට එවැනි රෝග ලක්ෂණ පහළ වීමකින් තොරව යම් ප්‍රතිශතයක් මේ ආකාරයට මිය යනවා. ඒ රෝගීන්ව අපිට හඳුනා ගැනීමට සමහර වෙලාවට බොහෝ කාලයක් ගත වෙන්න පුළුවන්. වැඩිහිටි වයස්වල ඉන්න උගදෙනෙකුට විවිධාකාර රෝගාබාධ තියෙනවා. එවැනි රෝගාබාධ වලින් පෙළෙන කෙනෙක් අසනීප තත්ත්වයෙන් සිටිනවා නම් රෝහලකට ගෙන යාමට මැලිවන්න එපා. ඒක ඊ타මත්ම බරපතල තත්ත්වයක්. ඒ නිසා ඕනෑම කෙනෙකු වෛද්‍ය ප්‍රතිකාර අවශ්‍යයි කියලා හැඟී යන හැම අවස්ථාවකම ළඟම තියෙන රෝහලට ගෙන යා යුතුයි. ඒ රෝහල් සියල්ලම එවැනි රෝගීන් බාර ගැනීම සඳහා අවශ්‍ය කරන සූදානම් වීම කරලායි තියෙන්නේ.
With inclement weather forecast in the coming days, health authorities say that necessary measures will be taken to evacuate COVID patients and those under quarantine in affected areas.
නිරෝධායනට ලක් වෙච්ච අය රෝගීන් නිවෙස්වල සිටිනවා නම් ඒ බව සෞඛ්‍ය කාර්ය මණ්ඩල දන්නවා. ඒවා අපිට නිරන්තරයෙන්ම ආපදා කළමනාකරණ කණ්ඩායම් වෙත යාවත්කාලීන කරමින් දැනුම් දීමට උපදෙස් ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා. ඒ හරහා එවැනි අය සිටිනවා නම් ඒ විශේෂිත ආරක්ෂිත ස්ථාන කරා ඒ අයව ගෙනියන්න කටයුතු කරනවා.
A total of 1,808 fresh COVID-19 infections have been confirmed in the island today so far. There were recoveries too. 1,228 COVID patients were given the all clear to return to their daily lives today, boosting Sri Lanka's total recoveries to 141,175. On the vaccination front, 925,242 people had received the first dose of Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine as of last evening. Further, 338,493 out of them have been completely inoculated against COVID-19 with both vaccine doses. As for Sputnik V, 14,984 people have received the first dose of the Russia-made jab. Meanwhile, 516,259 people have received the first dose of the Sinopharm vaccine. 2,435 persons have been given both doses of the jab. However, they are Chinese nationals in Sri Lanka. In the meantime, a consignment of 500,000 doses of China's Sinopharm vaccine is to arrive in the island at around midnight today. The stock is a donation from China. The previous consignment the country sent is also a donation. Meanwhile, Cabinet co-spokesperson Dr. Ramesh Patirana touched on the government's vaccine procurement plans and the difficulties it is faced with in the process.
We experienced a major difficulty in relation to sourcing this vaccine from AstraZeneca. One matter pertaining to that was that Serum Institute of India, they encounter a lot of difficulties because of the number of rising cases in India, and also the factory was caught on fire. So they are finding it difficult to match the demands now. Considering that, and also because of their inability to provide sufficient quantities, we need to look into another source. That's why we are looking forward to source some vaccines from Sinopharm. Our priority is to vaccinate more people as possible as at our earliest. So we are looking at different avenues to ensure that we source vaccines from, if not from Covishield, if not from AstraZeneca, we have to resort to Sinopharm and Sputnik. That's why we are looking at those avenues.
So AstraZeneca, the 13.5 million, is it now down to just 1 million?
Because they couldn't supply the required quantities. We are still awaiting that 600,000 doses for the second dose. We had vaccinated nearly 1 million population. We have managed to give second dose only for 300,000 people. So we are still awaiting that remaining 600,000 quantity, for which we don't get the confirmation as such. So there is no use of looking at that for a longer period of time if we can get it from another source.
In the meantime, Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, called on the member states to vaccinate at least 10% of the population of every country by September this year.
The ongoing vaccine crisis is a scandalous inequity that's perpetuating the pandemic. More than 75% of all vaccines have been administered in just 10 countries. There is no diplomatic way to say it. A small group of countries that make and buy the majority of the world's vaccines control the fate of the rest of the world. I'm calling on member states to support a massive push to vaccinate at least 10% of the population of every country by September, and a drive to December to achieve our goal of vaccinating at least 30% by the end of the year. This is crucial to stop severe disease and death.
Now, the State Department of the United States has advised the country's citizens against traveling to Sri Lanka. While asking US citizens not to travel to the island, it also noted that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has issued a Level 4 travel health notice for Sri Lanka due to COVID-19, indicating a very high level of COVID-19 in the country. Now, the US Embassy in Colombo, meanwhile, tweeted today clarifying that the travel advisory for Sri Lanka is updated from Level 3, reconsider travel, to Level 4, do not travel, slowly due to the prevailing COVID-19 situation in the country. It added that there is no change to the terrorist threat level. The government is hoping to call for international proposals for a 600 billion rupee project that will look to expand the country's oil refinery capacity to 145,000 barrels from its current 38,000 barrel capacity. This was announced at the weekly Cabinet media briefing today, while Cabinet co-spokespersons also announced the awarding of the tender for the construction of the elevated expressway from Aturgiriya to Colombo via Rajagiriya to the China Harbour Engineering Corporation. The project gives CHEC 3 years to construct the expressway and a further 15 years to operate before transferring it to the Sri Lankan government.
At the weekly Cabinet media briefing held this morning, it was announced that the government is to undertake a 600 billion rupee expansion of the country's oil refining capacity through an international tender on a build, operate and transfer basis.
දැනට ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ පවතින එකම තෙල් පිරිපහදුවේ ධාරිතාවේ දිනකට බැරල් 38000යි 45000 දක්වා වැඩි කිරීමටත් බැරල් ලක්ෂයක ධාරිතාවයක් සහිත නව පිරිපහදුවක් ඉදි කිරීමටත් build operate and trans පදනමින් මේ සඳහා දල වශයෙන් රුපියල් බිලියන 600ක මුදලක් වැය වේ අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. දැනට රටේ පවතින නීතිය අනුව තෙල් පිරිපහදුවක් පවත්වාගෙන යෑමේ ඒකාධිකාරී බලය තියෙන්නේ ලංකා කයින්ද තෙල් නීතිගත සංස්ථාවටයි. ඒ නිසා ආයෝජනය කරන සමාගමට අවශ්‍ය නීතිමය බලය ලබා දීම සඳහා කයින්ද තෙල් නීතිගත සංස්ථා පනත් සංශෝධනය කරන්න ඊ අමාත්‍ය මණ්ඩල අනුමැතිය හිමි වුණා.
In addition, the Cabinet co-spokesperson also announced that it has awarded the tender for the construction of the elevated expressway running from the New Kalani Bridge, the Port Access Elevated Highway and to the Aturgiri interchange of the Outer Circle Highway to China Harbour Engineering Corporation.
Calling for open bid, tender has been awarded to China Harbour Engineering Corporation. They can take 3 years for construction and 15 more years to operate and recover their cost and of course to earn a profit. So after 18 years, it will be transferred back to the government. As I mentioned earlier, it will be BOT. That means they have to operate the express highway for a period of 15 years to recover their costs.
Is there a cap on the tolls? I mean, what is the arrangement that the government has?
You know, when we call the proposals, the variable factor is the transfer year. Whoever the company who caught the lowest operating period would be the one who secure the contract. So there is an engineering estimate, but cabinet paper has mentioned that. I don't have the details with me at the moment. However, here the cost is not the variable factor, but the number of operating years. In this case, they are going to recover their investment within 15 years and thereafter they will transfer it back to the government.
Meanwhile, responding to questions over the implications of the cancellation of a 3 billion rupee letter of credit issued by the Bank of Ceylon for a planned purchase of luxury vehicles for junior parliamentarians, the Cabinet co-spokesperson stated that the Treasury has been instructed to negotiate with the vehicle supplier and seek a mutually beneficial settlement.
Well, we can negotiate it, you know. Frankly, we don't have the details. We made a policy decision that, as announced by the Prime Minister, those vehicles would not be purchased. But as you know, when a government is one of the biggest buyers, even in the international market, so our treasury would be able to negotiate with that company. So because we may have been purchasing so many vehicles in the past, so we may have some kind of influence to the company. So treasury officials would do the needful.
The weather is set to become worse than it currently currently is as Cyclone Yas builds up in the Bay of Bengal to what meteorologists call severe levels.
Heavy rains and strong winds have lashed many parts of the island, with Cyclone Yas surging towards very severe levels in the Bay of Bengal in the next 12 hours. The Department of Meteorology says that due to the influence of the system, heavy rain and wind can be experienced over the island, especially in the southwestern part, which will enhance from today until the 27th of May. The department added that wind speeds can increase up to 50 to 60 km per hour at times over the island and increase up to 70 km per hour along the western slope of the central hills, as well as the northern, north central, northwestern, western, Sabargamo and southern provinces, as well as the Trincomalee district. So far, Navlapite has reported the highest rainfall of 188.5 millimeters. Meanwhile, landslide warnings have been issued for the Kandy, Kegaul, Nuwara Ratnapura, Kalatura and Gaul districts. Further, the Nuwara District Disaster Management Unit has reported that 276 people of 65 families have been displaced in the Maskelia, Bhagavan Talava, Hatton, Watervalla, Ginigathena and Norton Bridge areas. Meanwhile, heavy winds in the Vallavai area resulted in damage to 19 dwellings. Flood warnings too have been issued as water levels in the Atanagallu Oya, the Kalani, Kalu, Ging, Nilvala and Mahamali rivers have reached overflow levels.
So as per the irrigation department, they have warned the rivers in the southwestern part of Sri Lanka, especially with the current rainfall and the expected rainfall forecasted by the Met Department. If more than 150 millimeters occur, there might be a flood situations in the Atanagallu, Kalani River, Kalu River, Ging and Nilvala River. So people are living beside these river basins has to be very vigilant with that situations, and if needed, evacuation process will be started with the instructions of the authorities and the disaster management center.
The Bangladesh Bank Board is said to have approved a draft $200 million currency swap deal with Sri Lanka in principle. Quoting Bangladesh Bank officials, a foreign media outlet said that the currency swap agreement would be finalized after getting a legal vetting approved by the government. Under the draft currency swap proposal, the Bangladesh Bank would provide up to $200 million in foreign currency to meet Sri Lanka's foreign currency expenditure. Against the fund, Sri Lanka would keep the same amount of its local currency, rupee, with the Bangladesh Bank, along with a government guarantee. The BB would get around 1 to 2% plus London interbank offered rate from Sri Lanka as interest. The BB officials are also quoted saying that the currency swap agreement also contains a rollover condition, allowing Sri Lanka to extend the period of repayment of the loan. Though the Central Bank of Sri Lanka told First at 9 that the deal is yet to be officially confirmed, an official there said that the currency swap initiative is happening as a result of Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa's visit to Bangladesh to join the celebrations of the Golden Jubilee of Bangladesh independence. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.